Ladies and gentlemen, Christmas has come early this year. Welcome to the Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get into it. Terrifier 3, everyone. The time has finally come. Of course, one of the biggest, most anticipated horror movies of the year, certainly one of my most anticipated movies of the year. The date, the time has finally arrived. I just saw this in the theaters just a few hours ago and had some time to kind of think about my thoughts and kind of put some stuff together here. So I'm fired up and ready to go. I've got some thoughts about Terrifier 3. Let's do it. Terrifier 3 takes place 5 years later after the events of Terrifier 2. This time, it's all during the Christmas season as Art the Clown is back and is bringing hell, terror, chaos, and everything else you can imagine with him to the residents of Miles County. But more specifically, he has a personal vendetta he's wanting to carry out against our amazing final girl, Sienna. Now, when it comes to Terrifier 3, you know if you are the intended audience or not. This is a film that, if you are a fan already of this franchise, you're almost certainly going to enjoy this one. It gives you pretty much everything you would want in this type of movie. I have a review on my channel for Terrifier 2 where I called it the Thanksgiving feast of slasher movies, and that is another applicable kind of comparison for this film as well. These films, and specifically Part 3, are extremely egregious, self-indulgent, over-the-top, completely ridiculous. They have a very wicked, twisted sense of humor and some of the most insane kills you've ever seen. And Terrifier 3 brings all that to the table as well. So, like I said, if you're already a fan of these movies, you're almost certainly going to enjoy Terrifier 3. Now, getting into more of the specifics, obviously you have a little bit of a different tone, a different vibe with this one compared to the other ones, whereas Part 2 was set on Halloween. This one takes place during the Christmas season and on Christmas Eve. And so the film gives you a nice little Christmas vibe to it, which I enjoyed. I like that they just kind of, change things up a little bit. You get a little bit different of a visual aesthetic. It's got the nice Christmas lights and colors. It's got the nice Christmas music that's playing in the background. And of course, we get to see Art the Clown dressed up as Santa Claus. Who could complain about that? And I've been a big fan of the visual presentation for these movies, as they have this very, dark, kind of grungy, gritty, almost like grindhouse exploitation type feel to them, especially that first film, and we get more of that here with Part 3. These are films that, while they are set in present day, they have that look and feel to them to where you could almost be convinced that they occur in like the 80s or 90s. With the exception of seeing some modern technology here and there, like a cell phone and stuff like that. A lot of it kind of has some of that old, almost nostalgic a little bit, but some of that old kind of 80s, 90s kind of vibe to it, which I liked, and we get more of that here with Part 3. This is a film, too, that is a little bit more grounded compared to Part 2, where Part 2 kind of leans a little bit into some fantastical stuff. This one has a more kind of grounded approach to it, much more in line with that first part. Now, Terrifier 3 kicks off, like I said, 5 years after the events of Part 2, and we see Sienna coming out of a psychiatric facility, wellness center, something like that. She's getting picked up by her uncle, and so she is obviously dealing with the last 5 years of trauma and horror that she witnessed and barely survived. And I'm a big fan of Lauren Lavera in this role. I think she's great. In just that one movie, she was able to solidify herself as, for me, one of my favorite final girls. And so I'm really glad we get more of her here and it continues her story. I really like the character. I like her attitude. I like her fight and determination and her grit. And she's just someone that's so easy to root for. She's somebody who's trying to learn how to live with and deal with and kind of cope with everything that happened to her in the second film. And she goes and she is now living with her aunt and uncle and her niece, Gabby, which is one of the new characters that we're introduced to in this film. And I was a fan of her character. She's this young girl, maybe, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that. The relationship between Sienna and Gabby becomes one of the focal points of the film, which I really liked. I liked their relationship dynamic. Sienna is someone that Gabby looks up to, and so I think Damien Leone did a good job writing those characters, continually fleshing out Sienna, but also introducing Gabby, doing a good job getting us to care and getting us invested in their relationship. One of my more mixed elements when it comes to Terrifier 3, and there's not too many, but it involves the character of Jonathan, which the only issue that I had is I wish we would have got more of him. And his role here is a little bit lighter. He's off at college. And we get some good scenes between him and Sienna and kind of them talking about how they're dealing with and handling everything. But I just wish we would have gotten a little bit more. You know, he's trying to kind of go live his own life and move on. But he's not in the film a whole lot. And I was a fan of his character in part 2. I'm still a fan here. I just wish we would have gotten a little bit more out of him. Now, of course, I can't talk about a Terrifier movie without talking about the kills. And the kills are everything you would hope for and expect. They are disgusting and insane and completely ridiculous and over the top. But man, the practical effects work is phenomenal. It's astonishing how good the practical effects work looks here, especially within the kill sequences. It's probably the very best I've seen in any sort of recent horror film within the last decade or so. They're just incredible. And now leading up to the release of this, I kept hearing some things with Damien Leone being like, yeah, we're going to try to push the boundary. We're going to try to, outdo ourselves from Terrifier 2. And so I was curious to see what they were going to do and what exactly that meant. Did they outdo themselves? Well, I'll say this. The quality of the kills are just as good as part 2, if not better. The creativity, the goriness, the violence of them are everything you would want. They do try to push some boundaries in terms of, some of the kind of unwritten rules of you can't do that in a horror movie. They do it, but they do it in such a way that it doesn't feel distasteful. They're kind of able to toe the line. They definitely push some boundaries. They do some things we haven't seen yet in these movies. But I thought the way they handled it, it worked, and it's definitely memorable and effective. But look, it's kind of like if you don't know what to expect going into a Terrifier movie, that's kind of on you, man. Like, you're going to see some crazy messed up stuff. And if you don't know that, I don't know what to tell you at this point. And again, here in Terrifier 3, just like the other films, Art the Clown is pretty fantastic. David Howard Thornton, man, brings such a crazy presence to this guy. And I said in my Terrifier 2 review, and I'll state it again because, again, it's applicable. Art the Clown is the perfect combination of the dark, sadistic, slasher killers like a Jason or a Michael, and also the theatrical, comedic slasher killers like Chucky and Freddy. And David Howard Thornton is able to take what's so great about both of those, types of killers and fuse them together into one creation, and it just works. This guy is evil, wicked, sadistic, and at the same time is theatrical and over the top and comedic. There was a handful of moments where I laughed in this because, again, things are so insane and ridiculous. You kind of can't just help but laugh at it. And Art the Clown, he brings the sadistic, messed up, comedic enjoyment and kind of fuses all that stuff together. So yeah, it's pretty great stuff. Again, if you've seen these, you know what to expect, and you're going to absolutely love it in this. Terrifier 3 also gives us more screen time with the character of Vicky, as she becomes a pretty main part of this film right alongside Art the Clown. And so it was cool kind of getting more of her character, and I'll be honest with you, man, there's a couple parts where she steals the scene. Man, dude, she is just awful in the best possible way. But yeah, I like kind of how they used her character. I like that they just, gave her some more screen time and kind of, I don't know if fleshed her out is the right term, but she gets more to do here, and they kind of work her into the story as well. And certainly with some things that you find out about her, it kind of opens up and expands on this world a little bit, which I really liked. So I liked the direction that they're kind of going and what they were able to do with her character. Now, when it comes to the overall world here of Terrifier and the lore and some of the stuff that's brought up in part 2 and now in part 3, we get some more context to stuff. There's some stuff that gets addressed and some stuff not so much. So we get some answers and some kind of direction with some of the major questions that we were wondering about, at least I was anyways. But then also here with Terrifier 3, we get introduced to some new things. And so there's kind of some new questions that we're now asking. And so I like that Leone is expanding on this world. My only concern is that I hope he has a destination. All of this stuff is great if he has a place that he's taking it to. And that's the thing. So as far as expectation goes going into Terrifier 3, don't expect all the answers and don't expect a solid conclusion. This is a franchise that will continue to make more films, and that's totally fine. I would love to see more Terrifier films because I'm a fan. I just can't help but have a mild level of concern just knowing so many other horror franchises, the more you make, the easier it is for things to get derailed and for, you know, bad movies to get made kind of thing. And so part of this has just another installment and another chapter feel to it, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. It all just kind of depends on what comes next and where the story ultimately goes. And so yeah, the jury's still kind of out on some of the questions and now some new questions, although it does help that we do get some context and some answers with some things. But any of my concerns with the questions and the mysteries within the Terrifier universe are just going to have to wait until we see what happens next. So I like that we do get some stuff. We don't get everything. It's expanding on the world, which is great. I can't wait to see what happens next. I just can't help but have a little level of concern just with the hopes that Damien Leone has a destination and he knows where he's taking this story, which I feel like he probably does, but I can't help but just be a little bit concerned about it, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, overall, this was a really fun time. Like I said, if you're a fan of these movies, I can't imagine you're not going to enjoy this one. It gives you everything you could possibly want, and it opens up the world a little bit for some more stuff, which is exciting. I'm excited about the potential of this universe and where these stories are going. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Overall, I'm between a 7.5 and 8. I'll just go with an 8. It's, yeah, it's a fun time. I can't wait to see it again. So I'll definitely add it to my collection right next to Terrifier 2 on the shelf. So that's all I got for you. Hit me up down below like always. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.